Like many others, I've always been interested in the Monster Hunter franchise, but was never really drawn into it. I own both Monster Hunter Worlds and Rise, and while enjoying the first few hours of World when I played it a couple years ago, I never really got into it much besides that, and I have not actually touched Rise at all. But I did really enjoy the little bit I tried of Worlds, from the incredibly in-depth weapon systems to the joy of exploring a world teeming with life to just the thrill I got from hunting monsters. But the game had a lot of confusing systems that caused me to bounce off of it pretty quick. So leading up to the release of Monster Hunter Wilds, not Worlds, with everything seeming to show the game was going to be a bit more approachable for new players, I was pretty intrigued, but still quite skeptical, not wanting to commit to the full game. But man, am I glad I did, because I have already played much more than I did with Worlds, and I have much more to go, and I'm a lot more invested this time around. This game is not perfect by any means, but for those wanting to get into the Monster Hunter franchise and world, it really feels like the perfect opportunity. So sit back, cook up a hearty meal, and let me share what Monster Hunter Wilds is like as a brand new player. So I'm going to approach this kind of splitting the video into the pros and cons of my initial impressions within the first 10 or so hours I played so far, especially from the new player experience. But first off, right off the bat, I have to acknowledge the performance of the game, because it's bad. It's really bad. The game's performance, particularly on PC, which I am on, it's not even just bad. It's terrible in a lot of instances. I have a couple kind of any edits installed to kind of smooth out the frame rate issues, to increase some of the just overall visual quality. And even with that, not only does it really not do that much, in all honesty, but the game itself still stutters and still freezes multiple times, not necessarily crashing, but just straight up will freeze in the middle of a cutscene or a fight sometimes, which is, not good when you're in the middle of fighting a giant beast and the game just freezes on you. Even if it's for only a few seconds, those are pretty key seconds usually. So the game not only has those issues, but also just doesn't look that good. It does not look like a game came out in 2025. It's using the same engine that Capcom used for Dragon's Dogma 2, which also didn't really look that good. It just kind of has this grainy look to the whole thing, even not using DLSS, and a lot of textures. Most of the textures are not great, not high quality, and even putting that on high, it's just not ideal. So that is a factor, but even with all that, the game is still very fun to play. And once I have kind of been able to push past some of those issues and accept them for what they are for now, I have had a great time with the game. As someone who really only knew the franchise as being a game where you would hunt monsters, crazy, I know. Yeah, I knew you also just had really cool weapons and you could make armor out of monsters, and that was it, which that is the game. But I never really got the appeal just from like that concept. Like, it sounded cool, sounded entertaining. But I don't know. I usually love story first games that also have really cool deep systems, so I wasn't super intrigued. But after having played about 10 hours or so of Wilds, I really get it. I really like this gameplay loop of starting an expedition, going on a hunt for this monster, going in a pretty deep fight with this monster across a couple different areas of terrain, collecting materials from killing it, and if you cut certain parts off, you cut like the tail off, or target some of the like the horns or whatever, you'll get those materials, and then you can take those to then craft armor specifically for that monster, which is something the game does really well, customization in general. But I just really love getting excited, being like, ooh, I just killed this monster, I want to go see what this armor set looks like. I really do think this is a great entry point for those who have not played a Monster Hunter or haven't really gotten into it, because of the way the game is structured so far, which I do know a lot of fans don't really like the way it's story structured, because I'm 10 hours in still in the kind of main story, and it is very linear, which people do not expect from this to be supposed to be like this open world thing. And I don't really love that it is linear, but what I do love is because of the way the story is laid out, and the campaign itself is laid out, it's very, very slowly, a little too slowly at times, is introducing you to the mechanics of the world and the game. So, for example, like I mentioned, when you go out to fight a new monster, you can, bring materials back and craft. Obviously, it introduces you to crafting, but so far, every fight in the game has been with a new monster. So you're not only having to stay on your toes and learn how to fight a different monster, but you're getting to experiment with the different mechanics of the game. In particular, the weapons, because you can kind of choose what weapon you want, kind of play around with it, because you're still, very early game, and you have that freedom to do so, which is great considering you don't have any freedom really in the campaign otherwise, and a lot of it is just kind of going along a path. Wow, look at these pretty sights. Oh, there's a monster. Let's maybe run away for a minute. Just kidding, let's fight. And it's kind of just been that on repeat, which is not great, but again, I do think it really is a very, albeit slow, ramp on for those new players like myself, because with Monster Hunter Worlds, if I remember right, you get like a little opening mission, a little kind of intro thing once you finish the opening mission, and then it's like, cool, go hunt monsters, and it's very free form, which a lot of people liked, and I'm sure I would like a lot more if I went back to Worlds now, but with Wilds, the way the campaign is laid out, it is very, very approachable. And a bit easy, I would say, but if you're playing solo, which is how the game is, I think, really designed to be played, especially in the campaign, even though I have obviously signaled for support because it's just cool whacking on a monster with like 3 different guys. Big fan. But if you're playing solo, I think it's still definitely a challenge, and particularly if you're still coming to grips with the weapons, which I certainly am. And that gets me to kind of the next thing I really love is the weapons and just customization overall. So I'm going to touch on the weapons first. If you know nothing about Monster Hunter, the weapons are something that I believe have been pretty much the same, at least in the last couple games, but they improve and tweak the actual mechanics and ways the weapons function between the games. And the weapons are all so cool, so unique, and each and every one provides such a wide range of playstyles and really leaning into the gameplay systems of, targeting certain aspects of monsters, whatever. You can carry 2 weapons in this game, which I don't know if it's new, but it definitely wasn't like that in Worlds, which is sick. And that's allowed me personally to try out, another one that I'm slightly interested in, but I have found that when I'm in the heat of a battle, I have defaulted to the weapon that I've used the most, which is the Switchblade Axe, which is so sick. You kind of have a shield and a little dagger sword that you can kind of charge stuff up with, and then you can switch it to this massive overhead axe that you can kind of do combos with, and it's really fun. I'm still learning it, but I definitely know it a lot more than any other weapon, considering this is what I've used the most. But yeah, the variety of combat is phenomenal because I think there's definitely going to be something available for every type of playstyle, because you can either do that kind of axe blade combo that I'm doing, or you can have a dual blade quick playstyle, or just like a big ol' sword, or this like healing assist trumpet, or just your typical bow and arrow, but not just a typical bow and arrow because it is a Monster Hunter, so each weapon has lots of intricacies and combos and ways you can use it. It's really impressive, and it's something that I think adds to the longevity of the game, not just in fighting monsters, but in trying out all these different weapons and mastering them if you want, or just, switching up your playstyle every once in a while. Albeit you do have to craft a weapon whenever you want to switch it up, but you usually can craft like the base level of each weapon pretty easily. And speaking of crafting again, you can craft all of your armor, and it all is based on the monsters that you kill, and each monster has its own armor set. So sick, at least so far. I don't know if that stays, but I'm assuming it'll stay. I love it. I love it so much. I get very excited, more excited, I would say, than actually killing a monster, to then go back and see what the new armor sets are going to look like, because they're all really cool and they really lean into whatever the new beast you just killed was. I'm at the point where I just killed the Dogashima. I don't know how to pronounce it. That was a sick fight. First of all, the armor set was like okay, but it was still just really cool to go see, and then see each weapon has a variant dependent on the monsters as well, which is very cool, and I'm very interested to see how the later monsters translate into those. But that just really leads into customization, because you can make your character look like more or less however you want. Right now, there's not transmog, but apparently once you get out of the campaign, you can kind of unlock transmog versions of all the armor sets. Very cool. Big fan of that. But you can customize your little cat, Palico, which I haven't even talked about. Big fan of Palicos. they're awesome. Definitely turn on the original cat language because they can like sort of speak English now, and it's kind of weird, but they're awesome. And you also have your mount, and you can customize every part of both of those, from the armor to their like hat to the actual color and kind of textures or whatever of the fur for both the Palico and your mount, which is very, very cool, and just really allows you to create this character in its entirety that is yourself. I named my Palico after my quite annoying but very cute cat. Here she is. She's very happy. She wants to play. Say hi. Okay, bye. And of course, the character creator itself is really, really impressive. And I've seen some really crazy customization that people have made, just either creating characters from movies or other games or whatever. I think it's built on the game is built on the same engine that Dragon's Dogma 2 was built on, which also had a very robust character creator. So people are kind of doing a lot of the same things here. As for the cons, I've kind of already touched on them. Obviously, the performance, once again, on PC in particular, terrible. You kind of, at least right now, 4 patches have been released. You absolutely have to download some tweaks and even some reshade stuff from Nexus mods or any mod sites. Like, it's bad. It's not great. And for the record, I'm on a 4070, and I have a Ryzen 9 5900X, 12 cores, and my GPU has 12 gigabytes of VRAM. So yeah, and it runs like technically, statistically runs okay. It just doesn't look that good, and that's stuttering and all these things. But besides that, it's just not the best looking game. There's pretty visuals, but the textures are not ideal. Again, already touched on all this. But the other main con I've just had is like the on-rails story, which I did say I do like overall, but I have only had one real chance to kind of explore the world outside of just talking to people, doing this little on-rails thing, defeating monster, talking to more people, and repeating that. And I do think it's just not ideal. Worlds, the previous mainline game, was kind of the complete opposite of that, like I said. So I think for the next mainline Monster Hunter game, if they can kind of have somewhere in the middle of this very on-rails Wilds experience and very open-ended Worlds experience, I think that would please both new players and existing ones, because I know existing players really, really hate this system, and I'm sure I would as well, because I'm like, I already know all this stuff. But again, I do think that for those like myself that are pretty wholly unfamiliar with how these games work, it is a decent way to structure the game, slowly allowing players to get a feel for all these very unwieldy systems and the controls as well, and be able to take in all this new information very, very slowly. And even then, it is still a lot. Like, I'm still a bit overwhelmed with things. Even 10 hours in, there's always new systems and things popping up. Like cooking, I didn't even mention. Cooking is, you can make a meal with things you've collected out in the wilds and provide yourself buffs, which is very cool. Now, I do remember in the previous game, there was this super cool cat chef that would like make the food for you. Now it's just you making it, which is not as cool, but it is what it is, I guess. Rest in peace, little cat chef guy. He was cool. That's one of the things I really remembered from my time with Monster Hunter Worlds. But those are really the main complaints I've had with the game so far. Overall, it is a great experience for a new player, and it has really gotten me hooked into the overall promise and gameplay loop of a Monster Hunter game. So much so that, once I probably get a little bored with Wilds and play a lot more of it, obviously, I am thinking of going back to try out Worlds and seeing the differences in the systems and gameplay and all the things, and really looking forward to that, honestly, and looking forward to continuing to play and enjoy Monster Hunter Wilds as a brand new player. So with all of that said, that's my experience. If you are a new hunter or a veteran, I would love to hear your take on the game, especially if you're a new person like myself, and I hope you are continuing to enjoy the game. If you're not playing it, I hope I inspired some interest in you. And I will see you out in the wilds, fellow hunters, and I hope you have a fantastic day.